Once upon a time, two boys grew up playing hockey in the village of Terrace, British Columbia. One of them went on to play in the National Hockey League. The other became a comedian. Now, one flies planes and coaches youth hockey. The other is still a comedian and owns new skates. This is their podcast, Enjoying Orange Slices with Jeff and Ian.
Hello, Jeff. My name is Ian Bagg. Yours is Jeff Sharples. You look angry as the weather is in California. You look like you've been working on a truck today.
Yeah, I was trying to get the lighting just right, but
It works.
that's just not going to happen. So I got my gear on from last night. I was on the ice with the youth hockey, and it's kind of chilly down here. It's a little rainy, so I got my fleece on. I like your jacket there today. Is that another new one?
This is a kind of a rain hoodie. That's why I'm wearing it, because I have to take the dogs out back in the rain again. It's raining down here. The weather's frightful.
It's pretty crazy that years of drought and then all of a sudden like crazy rain.
Well, they know how to do it. They know how to there's no water and then too much water. That's how they do it here.
The land of extremes. So kind of like some of the NHL teams.
Can't wait for the fires. That's what I can't wait for this.
Yeah, everything will grow up and then it'll be 100 degrees and
Yeah.
dry out and then look out. So,
And you are right about the NHL teams. Some of them just, oof.
Yeah.
Oof. Montreal looked like a beautiful team coming on the ice yesterday with those jerseys, and then they just didn't.
But you know what I think's interesting about Montreal is just like if you look at coaching, Marty St. Louis, I played against him when he was coming up. I think one season he was in Cleveland, I think, with the Lumberjacks, but forget whose organization that was. But you could tell when you played against him, this guy was unreal. And he went on to have a great career. Basically was hired with no coaching experience, right, to speak of. And everyone lauded it. They're like, oh, this is unbelievable. Great call. And everything's going really good. Now the wheels have kind of fallen off here over the last month or so in Montreal. And I just was kind of thinking to myself, like the NFL did that. And the Indianapolis Colts brought in Jeff Saturday, and they just were piling on him. And I don't know how much different his situation was than Marty's. Obviously, you want to pull for these guys and see them do well. But I'm just wondering if, what's going on with Montreal, if they're really quite young on defense, which doesn't help when you're trying to get wins, because these forwards are really good in this league and they take advantage of the young D until they get their footing. But I just was kind of thinking about that, like as Montreal struggles, like the NFL and everyone's pointing their fingers at the Indianapolis Colts. What are you thinking hiring a guy that doesn't really have any experience other than being a player? And Marty was a real similar situation, right?
Right, but
not exact, but anyways, I'm not saying that that's the reason why Montreal's kind of gone for the skids. I think it's because they're trying to play a bunch of young guys.
I think also that they're not worried about they're not going to make the playoffs. Why not take a chance and play your young guys and see what they can do, and maybe go with a generational player or one of the top four that are supposed to be very good players this year in the draft?
Well, they're going to be a seller at the deadline, yeah, and they're going to get some top guys. They got the top pick last year, and it's going to take some time. And if I was in the Eastern Conference, there's the have and the have-nots. I think you pretty much minus maybe one team. The Islanders are close, and I forget who the other one is to the wild card. But the Montreals and the other teams, Columbus, who somehow moved from the Western Conference over. But there's teams that have fallen off the pace. Montreal's one of them. And now you got to start looking down the road, because Tampa Bay's not going anywhere over the next bunch of years. Boston could have a little bit of a setback depending on Bergeron and Krejci if they decide they're not going to play next year.
Also, don't they have to sign? Don't they have to sign? Wouldn't you call it Pasternak? He's not been signed yet.
Yeah, I mean, so Boston could, be in a bit of an issue, but you wouldn't expect Florida to have the same type of year they're having this year, next year. Buffalo's gotten so much better. Detroit's getting better. Ottawa's getting better.
Islanders
So
getting better.
yeah, I mean, you just kind of
How
look
good
at
are,
where
how good are
Montreal.
the New York Rangers will be so much better when Horvat gets there.
Yeah, I would suspect that if Horvat's getting traded, obviously they'll take the best deal I think they can get, but I think they'll move him to the Eastern Conference unless somebody's willing to pay a premium on top of a premium for him out west. The Central Division, you might be able to get a better deal, but if anybody in the Pacific that's trying to get him is going to have to pay handsomely to get him. So I would expect him to go. The Rangers might be a great spot. Maybe Boston, because Boston always seems to find a way.
Seem to find a way. I got two questions. We'll talk about two more teams, and then we'll talk about business, and then we'll go into our interview, which is part 2 of Wade Flaherty. That's right. So good. We had to do a part 2. He continued on. And the funny part, Jeff, somebody said, man, I would have loved to heard some China stories. That's what somebody said. Somebody put up a post of that. And I'm like, well, they're coming today. So here comes some, he played in China, and he's going to talk to you all about that. Wade Flaherty, today's guest on the old Enjoying Orange Slices with Jeff and Ian. But let's go back. How great does Los Angeles look right now?
Yeah, they are unbelievable. So they came in and thumped Vegas the other night here in Vegas. And then we watched them both last night because this is a Tuesday. And the Edmonton Oilers came in and they thumped Edmonton. And they just look really good. And it's funny, I was listening to Jared Stahl, who does intermission and does some TV work for them. He also works with the organization. I was listening to him on the NHL Network last week, and they asked him, do you think this team's capable of first in the Pacific? And he goes, absolutely they are. And you and I liked them last year when we saw them in the playoffs.
He said he'd bet his haircut on it.
Yeah. Yeah. He so he said that he didn't think there was any doubt they could get there. And after what you and I saw last year in the playoffs, they're back playing that way. If they can sustain it and their goaltending holds up, it'll be really, really tough. And they frustrate teams. You could see last night, Edmonton got really frustrated. Vegas got frustrated the other night. And they play this 1-3-1 in the neutral zone. And just basically, it's almost like the old New Jersey Devils when Jacques Lemaire was there, shutting you down and just grinding you out. But they still scored 6 goals last night. I mean, one of them was an empty netter, but they had 5 goals or four goals on the power play. Really good team. That's what I would.
It looked like Jack Campbell had made the save of the year, and then it just that would have been considered a save 5 years ago, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's interesting for those of you that didn't see the highlight. The Kings were on the power play. They threw it from one side of the ice to the other. One timer, and Jack Campbell, our old friend on the show here.
Our old friend that we went a little quiet on. We're just letting
we went quiet on Jack. Maybe we got to start pumping him up again. He looked really good last night, and he made this save. But by the time he got over there, his glove kind of the energy and momentum from the shot took his glove into the net. And so they said the puck crossed the goal line from a slap shot from Kempe. But yeah, he looked really good last night. So my question is Stuart Skinner supposedly going back to Edmonton, or his wife's having a baby? So he's going. So they played last night in LA. They play Wednesday night in Anaheim. Then they play Friday in San Jose and Saturday in Vegas. So my question is where does Stuart Skinner fit into this? Does Jack Campbell play last night and then just play all 3 of the next 4 nights? Do they is he the coming out party again for him? Where he gets all this work and plays really well? I don't know.
Well, I think it's does he get his head where he isn't he's pendulum. He's back to his earlier ways in the NHL where he was just like swinging good, bad. And he was when he's really, really good, he's kind of in the middle, not too far left, not too far right. And just like me, owning an electric car and a gas range. That's me, not too far left, not too far right. Anyways,
no, you know what? You're never going to be accused of being right. You know what?
Anyways, back to it. He's just if he can go, it's just another day. I think this trip, if he plays those games, if he can get into that, you might see him break out again.
Yeah, the onus is on him now, especially if Skinner's gone. You know, Skinner obviously has been playing a lot of games, but he's gone home, I'm guessing last night or today, which is Tuesday. Is he going to show back up in Vegas and get a pregame skate Saturday morning, take some shots, and play Saturday night? It's not out of the question, but I think this is an opportunity for Jack Campbell to kind of get himself back. And he looked good last night. He looked relaxed. I thought the last few games I've watched Edmonton play, because I try and watch them all the time. I thought he looked really good.
I thought he was looking a little bit more like himself too.
Yeah. Now you would have loved to have seen. I think it was who had the breakaway. Was that Kempe that had the breakaway and he got the glove on it to make it 5? It would have been nice to see him make that save, but he was there. It just went off his glove in the net. The thing is, you're not going to get like playing in LA where they shut it down defensively, and even a team like Calgary or Vegas can kind of limit you. Edmonton, the grade A chances that you give up to the opposition, your goalie, he can't have a rough night. And then it starts snowballing the wrong way. So hopefully Jack Campbell is able to continue what the progress we've seen recently. And just a little thing to keep an eye open for the rest later in the week when he gets to Vegas. He plays really well in Vegas. Over the years, when he was with the Kings, he was lights out. So let's hope they're on the rise.
We call him Jack Campbell. When he's really good, we call him JC.
When you were talking about a goalie, and we're interviewing another goalie for the second. I don't know how many hours this is with Flats, but
quite an hour.
People want to know about China, so they're going to find out about it today.
One more about before we go about LA and Edmonton. Puljujarvi and Danault. Oh, Puljujarvi is just struggling. He even got his ass kicked. Like he's a bigger boy than Danault, and Danault just cranked him. I'm just like, oh.
Yeah, that game got
in trouble.
It got greasy at the end, and but you know what? Give Puljujarvi credit. I mean, he stuck his nose in there. It's not pretty this year. Change of scenery, and he might
need to change the scenery.
Yeah, he might need to change the scenery and some time to find his game. Like, I mean, it's been really rough for him in Edmonton. I just want to say this about Edmonton, and I'd love to see them in Vancouver in the playoffs, because I think every game would be 9-8 and it'd be the best hockey, like if you love goals, you've ever seen. But I watch every night. I try and go through the box scores in the games I don't watch, but I watch Edmonton as much as I can, because who doesn't want to watch McDavid and Draisaitl?
Right, who doesn't want
to? But their ice time, last night they lose 6-3. Okay, it was an empty netter, but their ice time was over 22 minutes again last night. I've seen them up around 27, 28 minutes. Not uncommon to see them around 23 to 25. That's a lot of ice time over an 82 game schedule. They're now going to play starting Wednesday, 3 and 4. They're in SoCal still. They're going to go down and play Anaheim, but I just, Kane can help with that when he comes back a little bit, and Hyman, but Hyman's got to play a lot too. Kane's going to have to play a lot. I don't know. I just got thinking last night, is Nugent Hopkins, who I really, really like and is having a good year, do they have to move him for a D? Like, I mean, who's the guy?
Got to move somebody. They're so far up. They're so far up against the cap.
Yeah.
Somebody has to go, right?
Right. And so, he's Edmonton, right? I mean, this kid's been there since day one. He's such a smart player. I love watching him. He's cagey. He's quicker than you think. He's gritty. He fits in. He's like a really nice compliment to all those guys. And this year, a few times, he's kind of taken it on himself. But I'm like, if you're going to talk about getting Edmonton a defenseman, and you're talking about getting, a guy that can eat up a lot of minutes for you, he's going to have to play over 20. Do you have to move a guy like Nugent Hopkins to get that player? Because you're pretty strong up front. I mean, the superstars are going to keep you in, offensively in games.
Going to be a 3-way trade with Quinn Hughes.
Really?
Yep.
Okay. Vancouver's going to trade him to where?
Vancouver's going to trade him to so and so, and then it's going to go that way. Okay.
Well,
What? Oh, sorry.
I love that because my grandpa used to, old Pa Jake. He was awesome, World War II vet, head of the Canadian Legion in Terrace, which was branch 13, I think, and he was also in Penticton, which is branch 80 or 82, I believe.
Dipping.
I know, he was awesome, but he used to go when he couldn't remember who it's like, and so and so and so and so. So you just took me back to I was about 8 years old.
My dad's whatchamacallit.
Oh my God, that's awesome. But here's the latest on the trades. Like, people are watching this, they're like, we know way more than you guys do about it. And you're probably right, you do. But what we're hearing is that now all of a sudden, the teams that want to start tanking and getting a shot at Bedard are now in a situation where they might move sooner. But if I'm Vancouver, okay, and I'm going to trade Horvat or anybody else on my team, minus Pettersson, and probably Hughes is available, do I not just kind of see how this goes as I get closer to deadline? Because Vancouver's such a team that you never know what you're going to get. They could run off 5 or 6 in a row just as easy as they could lose 5 or 6.
They're still just below 500, right?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't look good because the teams are trying to catch, like Calgary's slowly kicking it into gear. Edmonton, you've got the superstars, so they're always going to be around. And then a team that's not even in right now is Colorado, right? And that's your Stanley Cup champs. And Nashville's kind of trending. So I know there's a lot of moving pieces, but I mean, really in the Pacific, to me, or even, the Central, I think the teams that get in, you'll have first and 8 seeds or whatever you're going to have, your top, but are they really that much different once the puck drops in the playoffs?
No. You just got to get in. It's not like, it's not like before where it'd be like your 8th seed was guaranteed to go out. Now it's your 8th seed is, you can't take them lightly.
Well, and hey, don't you think last night, like when you watch LA, boy, I'll tell you what, they get the lead and they get their structure going. They're so tough. But when that game went chaotic for about 10 to 12, 15 minutes there, and Edmonton was right in their wheelhouse, and LA was on their back foot, and Edmonton started going. And, Edmonton's one of those few teams, and Vancouver, I think, plays that way too. I think Vancouver can play a chaotic style. And I think that I'd love to see 5 teams from the Pacific get in and just see what happens, because they're all pretty exciting. I mean, Calgary, a little bit more tight checking you'd expect, but in LA, but they still, LA plays a pretty exciting game too. So Vegas is pretty exciting. You got Vancouver, if they could get in. Seattle's really exciting this year if you watch them. And of course, Edmonton is must-see TV because you never know what you're going to get there either, right?
Well, I would love to talk more. I'd love to talk about how Columbus is the most boring team ever of all times, and it'll just always be where they are. But we don't want to make this thing into a 2-hour event, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be 1:45. So let's get to our interview that is brought to you by superdeker.com. If you want to learn how to stick handle like the pros, Super Deker is a training system for at home. Go to superdeker.com, use the code SLICES, get yourself a little bit of a discount, and take yourself from stick handling like Ian Bagg all the way to stick handling like Jeff Sharples. Now let's go to our interview with the one and only Wade Flaherty. And it's part 2 of all Terrace Week here on Enjoying Orange Slices with Jeff and Ian. That's right. Wade's back to tell us more stories. We're just leaving him. When we left last time, he's just in Rockford. He's having a great old time there. And how does it end in Rockford there, Wade?
How does it end in Rockford? Well, the season's winding down. I got banged up a little bit with my shoulder. So I was sitting out. I had a shoulder injury and did some x-rays on it. Couldn't really find out what was going on. So the last say month and a half, I was just kind of doing the thing, working with Corey Crawford and doing a few drills and not really putting the pads on or anything. One day I'm driving down and I get this email from Chris Collins, who was actually one of our broadcasters when I was with the San Jose Sharks. And he wanted to get in touch with me. And I was like, oh, I haven't heard from this guy in a long time. So I give him a call and we had a good chat on the phone. And he tells me that they're starting up a hockey program in China and they're interested in me coming over being a player coach.
Nice.
And I kind of laughed a little bit and I said, China? Did you say that right? And he's like, yeah, we're going to go in there, try and do the Hockey Canada model. We're going in trying to do an infrastructure of hockey, you know, with the population and such over there and try and get it going. So I was like, huh, interesting. Anyways, long story short, I hang up the phone and I laughed to myself and I said, not a friggin' chance. China? Are you kidding me? Anyways, he called me back a couple days later and gave me more information and more information. I was like, huh, very interesting. So he eventually talked me into it. And I said, well, listen, I got a shoulder issue and I don't think I can play anymore, you know, especially in North America. Like that's what they're telling me, unless I have to have surgery. And he goes, we'll fly you down to San Jose. We'll have Doc Ting take a look at it. Doc Ting has been the doctor for the San Jose Sharks since they started. And so we're talking probably the end of May. They fly me down to San Jose. They zip me in, they do an MRI on my shoulder, and Doc Ting is informing me that he thinks I'd be able to still play. And what's happened is my old surgery has started to fall apart a little bit. And he said, but we can give you a nice cortisone shot in the shoulder and that'll make things feel pretty good. So I'm like, sure, okay. Anyways, so we do that. Shoulder starts to feel pretty good. And I agree verbally to a contract to go join the China Sharks, who are essentially being run by Silicon Valley Sports and Entertainment, which is the parent company of the San Jose Sharks. Do my contract verbally, and had not in June had not signed anything. And July 1st, my phone rings. I'm a 39-year-old goaltender that's thinking he's going to retire, and I got a 2-year offer on the table from the Tampa Bay Lightning. So now they're okay. I'm 39, guys. Anyways, this is about the time that Len Barry had bought the Tampa Bay Lightning. And so I said, I was saying to them, I was like, guys, I'm banged up. I don't think I can play in North America anymore. And they're like, no problem. We'll bring you down. We'll do the surgery. Then when you're ready to play, you can play. So what they were doing, what they wanted me to do is work with one of their young prospect goaltenders who was a first rounder that they were going to have in the American League. And they were going to try and double up what I was doing with Chicago. Long story short, I'd given my word to Chris Collins and the San Jose Sharks. And so I stuck with that. So that's what I did. I ended up agreeing to go to China, and which was interesting to me is because it was a 36 game schedule that started late August, and it was going to be over about the 10th of January is when it was going to end. I was at the end of my career. I thought I'd go over there, have a little fun. The way he sold it to me, it would be very interesting if they got this big engine running and started developing hockey. I thought, hey, there might be a future down there.
Nice. What city were you in China?
The team was based in Shanghai in a university district with about 8 different universities. So it was actually really cool. When we started, the arena wasn't ready. So we ended up going into a northern China city close to the Russian border from
fun.
what I understand. Like we're talking way up there. So the way the Asian Hockey League worked, there was one team in China that was allowed 7 imports. There was 2 teams in South Korea, South Korea, that they were allowed, I believe.
It's tough to get imports into North Korea.
I believe it was 4 imports for the South Korean teams, and then the rest were Japanese teams, and there was 5 teams there, and they were allowed 2 imports. What they were trying to do was even it out as best they could. So I was over there. We were up in northern China, where I'm pretty sure they hadn't seen, Caucasian men walking around, and I'm sitting there with Steve McKenna, who's about 6'7", bald with a goatee, and we're walking down the streets where they're selling oranges and fruit and everything, and they're all staring at this monster of a man, and I'm like, I don't think they've ever seen a guy this big before. Anyways, it was quite. So we were there for 2 weeks up in northern China, and I can't even remember the name of the city. But then we moved down to Shanghai, and when we were in Shanghai, everything was North American run. So we had North American coaches, trainers, you name it. They brought everything in. My gear, funny story, was my gear had not shown up yet, so it was sitting in Langley, and I talked to the San Jose Shark representative, and I said, listen, my gear's sitting in Langley. I need to get it shipped out. And he says, yeah. And he gave me the FedEx numbers or whatever. And he said, and pads and gloves, they come in big boxes, right? So I phoned Carmi and gave her the information of the FedEx numbers. And I said, listen, open those boxes and you fill it with as much food as you can. I don't care how heavy it is. I need canned chicken. I need granola bars. I need it all, because the food, I lost a lot of weight the first 2 weeks while I was over there.
It's interesting. Jeff, you spent time in China as well. How did you do 2 years there?
Yeah, we were over there for over a year, but it wasn't playing hockey. But we were in Macau, and then which is different. Like the Chinese have what they call special administrative regions, SARs, and Macau's one of them. Is Shanghai or around Shanghai might be one of them too. Flats might remember that. Hong Kong is another one. And these are special regions that you just don't kind of wander around China and go from place to place like you would go from state to state or province and province in Canada, the US. And so we were in Macau, but we would go over to Hong Kong. And Flats, what years were you over there?
Would have been 9, 10, 09,
Yeah.
10, I believe is what it was.
So, yeah.
Before
So we were
the Olympics, that was after the Olympics.
It would have been before the Olympics. So it would have been a year before the Olympics, actually. So it must have been 8, 9.
8,
Mhm.
9.
I believe.
Yeah,
I did this. It's funny that we're all three guys from Terrace, and we've all been to China, because I did shows in Shanghai and Beijing, and it was interesting as well. Like it was very. They had Kim Gaffigan brought his brother, started the cat factory over there, so the Caterpillar factory. So they brought us in and did a bunch of shows over there, and it was crazy. We had drivers and stuff like that, but it was an interesting 2 weeks. I'll say
Interpreters.
that. Yeah, interpreters. A lot of restaurants turned out to be more whorehouses than restaurants. It was very
Hey, Flats, okay, so you and McKenna over there, who played, if I remember correctly, he played with the Kings, and he played around the league a little bit, but who else did you guys have for imports, or who were some of the imports over there that people might remember?
Yeah, we had Kevin Dew on our team, who was I think he was a college player that came out, and then Jason Beeman, who was coming out of the East Coast League. We had Kevin Coral, who was that played around a little bit in the East Coast League, a little bit in the American League. Once we got out of that northern city, which was a bit of an eye opener, but once we got down to Shanghai, it was really good. Like they put us up in a Japanese international hotel. That had 3 different restaurants in it. It had the one, the Japanese Benihana style where they cook in front of you, which was pretty cool. They had another restaurant that was more of a cafe style, that you could get North American Chinese food in it, like the sweet and sour porks and all that stuff. You get fettuccine, grilled cheese sandwiches, you get all that stuff. And then they had the third restaurant, which was the Chinese authentic restaurant, and we never actually went into that one. We could see the fish in the tanks and stuff, and
That's fun.
so we never actually ate in that one. But the hotel was beautiful. It was great. They really took care of us. The rink was about 1.5 miles away, and we had bikes with little baskets on the front of them that we trucked back and forth to the rink, which was pretty cool. The infrastructure of the city was amazing. Like big, massive roads, bike lanes. It It was actually quite nice. The weather was similar to Vancouver. It was fairly mild, but it was a lot of fun.
How long are you there for, and what happened to that? Did they continue on with that? What was going on over there? Was there a next round or what?
So no, there wasn't. The San Jose Sharks eventually pulled out. So this was their first run at it. And at the end of the day, so we were technically the men's national team playing, and just with some imports. So technically we weren't, but we were. But and they also had the women's national team that was playing the Japanese team to go to the Olympics in Vancouver that year. They were having a playoff. Anyways, as it tends to happen, I think over there, some money was going out the back door. And anyways, long story short, the Sharks just had enough at the end of it because they were missing and losing some money at the end of it. So they decided to pull out at the end of it. But that didn't happen until the following summer, because they fully had plans on going back there. And as they were negotiating to go back there, from what I understand, they just couldn't come to an agreement. I think the Chinese hierarchies were just give us the money and we'll take care of everything. And the Sharks were like, nope, that's not the way it works. We're coming over. And really what they wanted was the Sharks to give them money and then that's it. Stay out of it, just give us the money. And the Sharks weren't into that.
Hey, Flats, so would you have gone back for year two? Was that the plan at the time, or were you just kind of taking it year by year?
I don't think I would have gone back for year two, Sharps. At the end of the day, I was as I went over there to be a player coach, thinking out of a 36 game schedule, I might play 15 or 16 games. I ended up playing 36 games. So as a 40-year-old, I was like, the wear and tear on the body was, and we did pretty good. Like we, believe it or not, we won like 5 or 6 games. And that, I'm telling you, we did pretty good because we got a tie in this Japanese city, and it was going to a shootout. And I was like looking at the bench. They were throwing gloves in the air. They were like skating on the ice. It was like we won the Stanley Cup. And I was like, what is going on? Well, they hadn't won a game in like 4 years. And now they just tied one. They were so excited. I was like, wow. So anyways, yeah, Sharps, to answer your question, I don't think I would have gone back. And the way it turned out, that's when I started getting calls and emails from the Blackhawks to come back to them. So I went on to a new venture, I guess you could say.
Before we move on to that, how many fans would they have in that place in Shanghai?
You know what? It was our home opener there was probably about 45 to 5,000 people were at the game, believe it or not. And by the end of it, they were putting these games on TV. So it was pretty cool. And they were obviously marketing it towards the university district because it was massive. Like there was a lot of university kids there and such. So, there's lots of different things that went on there. You'd go, they paid us basically $25 per diem, and you could eat for $25, US a day at the hotel. But you could eat for probably $2 US if you went over to the cafeteria at the university. And I tried that once. Said once. As I watched the cook grab a bag of rice with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth and drag it across a dirty floor and pour a bunch of rice in. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I'll be eating here again.
Yeah, well, one of my favorite meals over there was the time they put the worms on our table and the guy comes running over, wrong table. So there's a story over there, and one of the locals told if it flies, we eat everything but the airplane, and on the ground, if it moves, we eat everything but the table and chairs. So yeah, we're kind of picky over here, right? But hey, Flat, before we move on, before we move on from that, how would you say the hockey was? Like, what could you compare it to? Something that maybe someone's familiar with in North America?
You know what? I was really impressed with the hockey when I got over there, mostly because they were very fast and very good at passing the puck. but they didn't shoot like they do in North America. So I don't know where I would compare that to. So it took me a little bit of time to adjust and just be more patient in the game. Once I figured out how they could shoot, and some of them, obviously, if you ran into one of the imports on another team, which usually ended up being D-men that had big blast slap shots that were coming through, but it was the parting seas anytime someone like that would start to wind up. So for the most part, Sharps, it was a fast game within reason, being in Japan and Korea, but and they passed the pucks very well. And if you go back and look at it, you got the Koreans that are moving up the ladder in the international play, so are the Japanese. The Chinese have actually stalled. I think they're ranked in the 80s or something like that. But the Japanese and the Koreans are moving up in the ranks.
Nice.
Mhm.
Nice. So you end up back, and you think this is so it's January, right? You're done in January. So do you move right into start working with the Chicago Blackhawks right away?
Yeah. So what happened is we had our Christmas break. We had 6 games left, so I had to come back, and they started on like the 3rd of January that we were starting back up. So we all returned. We did our little Christmas. We had a 10-day Christmas break. We returned. And when I got back into China, I got an email from an Al McIsaac, who was an assistant GM of the Chicago Blackhawks, and one of the guys that had brought me in there to work with Corey Crawford along with Dale Talon. And he sent me an email. I got this email, and I'm like, and he said, I need to talk to you, and I need to talk to you right now. As soon as you get this, call me. And I was like, okay, well, I'm in China. So I'm thinking, okay, I'll try and figure out. I got this little flip phone that I got. So I'm like, so anyways, I started talking to him. He goes, listen, our goalies are struggling a little bit here. We'd like to hire a goalie coach for the American League. I was like, oh, well, the whole time I'm sitting there thinking they might want me to come play for them. So I'm like, what are you going to do? But so I said, hey, that sounds interesting. He goes, but we need you to get here right now. And I said, well, right now, like I committed to this, what I'm doing. There's 6 games left. It's over in like a week and a half. And then we can plan on something then. And he goes, oh, and then anyways, long story short, he agreed on that. They sent me out some paperwork, a contract, and I agreed to it. So really, I got back into Vancouver on the 15th of January, and I started. The only thing I was waiting for was my immigration and my work permit to go down into the States. And what we did was the developmental job was a 2-week in, 2-week out going into Rockford. And the goalies that were in Rockford at the time were Corey Crawford and Antti Niemi. And they were both struggling a little bit, but because I'd had a relationship with Corey Crawford the previous year from playing with them, they brought me in as the developmental goalie coach, which was interesting because Chicago was actually one of the first teams in the National Hockey League to hire a second goalie coach as a developmental goalie coach. So they were kind of cutting edge, but the NHL is a bit of a copycat league. Or it is a copycat league. So now every team has a developmental goalie coach. So it was quite interesting that, I was technically the first developmental goalie coach in the National Hockey League.
Groundbreaking.
So when that guy called you and you talked to him, did he say, what are you doing in China? These guys must have been like, Flats, you lost your head.
Yeah, he pretty much said that. What the hell are you doing, son? And I was like, hey, it ain't so bad.
You never seen Bad News Bears?
Right on. No, I was winding the career down. And so, you know what, the way I looked at it, guys, was, you know what, I'm going to wind the career down. I'm going to play a 36-game schedule. There's a possibility that something could come out of it at the back end, but I was going over to have some fun, throw a few bucks in my pocket while I'm doing it. And they sold me on it. Obviously, I would not have gone to China if it was a Chinese run thing. It was totally North American run. It was run by the San Jose Sharks. I had talked to Greg Jameson, who was one of the San Jose Shark, higher ups. And he assured me that if there was any issues, they would take care of it. Like my computer went out on me, caught a virus like the second day I was there. I had a new computer within 3 days. Like they were really
The virus.
It was
The virus where you're watching the hockey highlights
Yeah, it was a lot
Sure,
of
eh?
fun.
Breaking down film.
Yeah, there's a lot of film being broken down.
Getting ready for your next move.
Yeah.
How close were you to taking that? Like, had China not been in the way, would you have taken the job in Tampa? The
Oh
offer?
boy, that's, you know what, I never really even thought of that, Ian, but yeah, you know what? I probably would, because the way they explained it to me was, hey, you know what, if we got to repair your shoulder, we'll repair it. Because what I was told is you could probably go over by the shark doctors. You could play a game, but he said in North America with the banging and the bumping, he said there's no way your shoulder is going to survive.
Right.
So he said there's a chance that it will survive if you go over there into China. So with Tampa saying, hey, listen, we'll fix your shoulder, and if you're good for a year, or if you play and you can't make it through and you got to have shoulder surgery, then we'll put you in as a coach. You know, so what they were really looking for me to do was work with their young goalie, who was a first-round draft pick that was scheduled to be in the American Hockey League. That was their sole purpose, is what they wanted. They wanted me to help develop their guy, like I did with Corey Crawford.
Right.
So I guess I probably would have, if I hadn't given my word to the Chinese and the San Jose Sharks, I probably would have taken that job.
Hey, where was their farm team then?
Would have been in Norfolk, Virginia.
Norfolk.
And that would have been with Cooper, right?
Yeah, not sure who would have been the coach then, but because we would have been talking. What would it have been? Well, it would have been 08, 09, right? Or I'm thinking that's some.
Hey, so then you come back from China, and right away you got an opportunity to get in again in Chicago, right? Is that kind of how long did you stay with them then for?
So what was interesting is I had agreed to the contract with the Chicago Blackhawks to be their developmental goalie coach as I left China, and then they wanted me to get down there right away. So I said, hey, no problem, I'm ready to go. And it was a 2 week in, 2 week out. So I was all set to go, but we had to wait on the immigration and the work permit to work in the US. That happened and everything got done just February 1st, I guess it was. So I moved right into the coaching pretty much immediately. And the funny thing is when I was in with the Sharks playing in China, we were on the NHL pay schedule. So I was getting paid technically from my checks were coming from the San Jose Sharks. And I always joked with Carmi that it must be really screwing up the mailman, because starting February 15th, I had checks from the Chicago Blackhawks and the San Jose Sharks coming. So I was kind of double dipping. It was kind of fun. It was working out pretty good. But yeah.
And now we know why you're in Canada.
Sorry, Bill.
Hey, so you were down there, and so basically, as you kind of wound your career down, it's kind of, so we're looking last 12 to and now we're what, 23. So basically we're almost 15 years into the NHL teams realizing that they couldn't have a guy show up once every or twice a month to kind of go out and have some beers and skate around with the goalies after practice.
Exactly.
Now it's a real focused, it's a job that now so you're there. Was that it for you in Rockford? Because Chevy was there then, right?
Chevy was management with the Blackhawks. I come into Rockford, finish that season off. I start off the next season. And actually I was there 2 more seasons, and that's when the Winnipeg Jets came into the National Hockey League. So I was still doing the 2 in, 2 out. And when Winnipeg came in, I was actually at development camp in Chicago, as a matter of fact, when I got the call from the Winnipeg Jets. Well, obviously they had to ask there's Blackhawks for permission. And so I sat there and I agreed to a contract with the Winnipeg Jets that day. When that summer, and shortly after the draft, I believe it was.
Hey, so I want to just back up, Flats, because you're in Winnipeg now, but it's pretty important because, like you said earlier, the Chicago Blackhawks were kind of cutting edge of actually getting goaltenders in to work with goaltenders. Who is the one person that you kind of attribute, helping you get that started? Who was the one, or was there multiple people with the Blackhawks who are like, hey, Flats, you know what, we've kind of identified where we have an issue. Like, who was that person? Because that's pretty sharp.
You know what? You know who I would say, without actually knowing, is who I would tell you it would have been the general manager of the Rockford Ice Hogs, which would be Mark Bernard, because he's an ex-goaltender. And I would suspect, because when I got the call, and when they started filling me in, while I was waiting for my work permit, was both goaltenders were struggling, and they didn't know. And Steph Wade, who was the head goalie coach in Chicago, an hour away. The schedule was just too taxing for him to get into Rockford, for practices. So the guys were kind of, as every organization was, they were kind of on their own. They didn't have a goalie coach, and you would have coaches and that don't know a lot about it. So you have a general manager in Rockford that would know something about goaltending. And with me being there the previous year, it's probably just perfect timing that they thought of me and decided to, hey, we need some help for our guys here, because Corey Crawford was their number one prospect as a goaltender. Mm-hmm. So that's when they brought me in, and we kind of went through it. We identified problems. I already had a good relationship with Corey because I was there the whole year in the previous year. So, and then just went from there.
Hey, did you, before, because now you're full time, but did you ever have it where they played really good when you were there and tanked when you were gone, or vice versa? Like, guys, I'm kind of wondering, because you come in and spend all that time, you're looking for, it's a great job, right? And then you get to go home and do your thing. But how did they play? Like, did you find that they were a little uneven, or?
Yeah, you know what? It worked both ways. They would be not so great sometimes when I was there, and when I was gone, they'd be on a roll. And how I really worked the schedule, because they put me in a scouting role as well. So I would come into Rockford and work with the goaltenders. And if things were going great. If things weren't going so great, my standard line is, it's a developmental league. If they were already right, developed, they'd be in the National Hockey League. So relax, it's going to take some time. It was a little bit of a bluff on my part, but anyways, what I would end up doing was they would bring me in, and as I would leave, I would always leave on a Friday, and I would end up going to a college to watch a free agent goalie or a potential draft pick goalie. So I got to check out a few colleges throughout the U.S., Cornell, Boston College, which was pretty interesting. I'd fly in on a Friday and I'd watch a game Friday, Saturday, and then I'd go home on the Sunday, and I'd go home from the East Coast. So is where they mostly had me going. To all these college free agents were on the East Coast.
Anybody did you pick anybody?
I didn't. I didn't. I had a couple guys. Essentially what you do is you make a list together, you compile a list, and then and you kind of rank them through 1 through 5, and you give it to management, and they do with what they want to do with it. We ended up signing an Alec Richards, who was playing in Yale, who I'd watched. Very good goalie. He had a good college career, didn't pan out in the pro game, but I think I had him ranked number 3. Ben Scrivens was another one that played for Edmonton and Toronto. He was one that played in Cornell. But no, they never really went with my recommendations.
Hey, Flats, it's funny, because we play junior. For people that have been to junior games, or maybe not, how about college hockey? It's kind of like a spectacle. It's a whole different feel when you walk into a college rink and there's a college game going on. There's so much energy, right, at those universities, but they kind of freak you out the first couple of times. It's like, oh, I'm here to watch hockey. They got the band going. Everyone's all fired up.
It was awesome. I think the first one I went to was Cornell, and back in the day, you'd rent the car, and I'd had no idea where I was going. So I got the GPS going, and I'm coming into this Cornell University, and it turns to a little brick roads and cobblestone. And I'm looking around. Yeah. I'm like, what is this place? Wow. Anyways, I got into the rink, and it was awesome. You're right. The band is going, and I'm watching warm up, and And anyways, the starting lineup and all the students are around, and they announce the Cornell lineup. And then I forget who they were playing. They do the announcement. I think it was RPI they were playing. And all these newspapers all of a sudden came up, and everybody pretended as if they were reading newspapers when they were announcing the lineup for RPI. And I was like, this is unbelievable. Then the band would kick in and chants, and it was almost like, it reminded me of, well, after the fact, but it reminded me kind of the European, how they do all their chants and everything in sporting events. When you see their soccer games or the Spangler Cup, they have all these chants and everything that go on. That's kind of the way the colleges would do it. And then the bands are unreal. So it's quite the spectacle to watch a college game. It's pretty cool.
So in the end, that's why we know there was only one. They never paid any attention because you were walking around with a beer in your hand, like enjoying like Friday night on the college campus. How much it doesn't get any better than this. But I would have loved to know what Chicago thought when the next time you went to one of those games and you showed up with your newspaper when they started reading the visiting lineup.
They would have thought a lot about the expense report that came in too.
How close do you, I'll just start again. Do you think you were moving up where you could have been in the goalie coach in Chicago itself, or do you think you were stuck in that developmental part there?
Yeah, I would have been stuck in it. And you know what? Quite honestly, I was quite happy with doing the development. The key word is development. You're trying to develop goalies.
When I say stuck, I don't mean like it's a horrendous. I'm just saying the guy in front of you that's in Chicago, he's not going anywhere, is he?
Usually what happens, in the developmental side is the National Hockey League has a lot to do with connections as well. So for you to move up, there'd be a coach or somebody that's gotten a job somewhere that's looking for a new goalie coach or something like that. So would I have been, I would have been stuck there, but that would have been fine. There's guys that do that job for 10, 12 years. Would I have been stuck there? I would have accepted that. I would have been fine, because the key word is development, and it was a good way to get my feet under me, in the coaching side of things. I wasn't ready for the National Hockey League and the pressures that come with it.
Mm-hmm.
So to be in the American League and get that, it was much better.
Hey, so Flats, let's just talk about it. Okay, on an American Hockey League game, when you're down there as a developmental coach, who are you watching the game with? Because I just want to draw a comparison with the way it was then to the way it is now. Who would you be sitting there with? Would a lot of nights you be sitting by yourself, maybe up in a corner of the rink where there weren't some people so you could get away?
Yep.
Okay, like how would that pan out at an American Hockey League game, watching the Rockford play and watch Corey Crawford trying to find his way to the NHL?
So you're exactly right. A lot of games I'd be sitting by myself with my book that I had, and I'd be writing notes. Obviously, I'm scouting the other goaltender. That was part of the job, because you're making a list of goaltenders and building a book on all these guys. And I'm not talking about how to score on them, because we may eventually want to trade, because these are all prospects that you're watching throughout the American Hockey League. So I'm making a book the whole time. I'm also watching Corey Crawford. Then after the game, I'd go down there, win or lose. You'd sit there and talk with the coach. They'd tell you how they loved your goalie or they didn't like your goalie. And then you'd have to kind of explain to them what happened, on certain issues or certain goals or whatever. But very little pressure.
Right. And so now when you come down to Vegas and we're at the game, and I have to look for a certain kind of head up in the press box where Wade sits, but I can always tell the profile.
I don't have a problem.
I can also tell, you're sitting there beside Chevy, right? Kevin Cheveldayoff, the GM and of the team, we all both go way back with, and then Mark Chipman, the owner of the team. So, here you go from having your book. Probably you got your computer up now, sitting beside the guy who's responsible.
Giving everybody a virus.
Yeah, and making sure you're watching the proper film, but you're sitting there beside the guy who's responsible for every player on the ice, Okay, that those guys are all Chevy's guys. Okay, and then you're beside the owner who's writing the checks. So
Right.
the difference, and you talk about the pressure. Well, there's the difference in the pressure right there. You go to an American League game, and like you said, and you know, it's all on junior and college. It's all about developmental. And yeah, you want to win, but I guess your focus is a lot wider, right? When you go to a Winnipeg Jet game, your focus is on Helly, right, and Hellebuck and Rittich this year versus or whoever you had in the past versus this wider lens that you kind of see things before you get to the NHL or you have to.
Exactly. So, and the key word that I used earlier when you're in the American League is developmental. If they were ready for the NHL, if they were fully developed, they'd be in the NHL. So they weren't ready because they were in the American League. Now you're in the National Hockey League. You're sitting with management, sometimes with the owner, and now you need to win. This guy needs to play well, and he needs to play well every night. That's the expectation of management and the owners, but it's not realistic either. There's going to be off nights. There's going to be goals that go in that are stoppable, or goals that go in that management think are stoppable. So the pressure becomes a lot more, and that's the nature of the beast. So we're that's the business. You're hired here to produce, and that's your job.
Jeez. Hey, I'm trying to take my mirror out here. Hey, Flats. Okay, so during a game, just talk a little bit about. I know we're kind of on our way to Winnipeg here now. We're talking about
We're in Winnipeg.
Well, we are in Winnipeg, but if we go back, there's a couple questions I want to ask you. The difference during the game, like when you're not at the game or you're at the game, maybe you're going up to the bathroom getting a drink at home. You're doing getting something to eat. In the American League, would you ever go down between periods?
I would always go down between periods, not necessarily to talk to the goalie. I have a standard rule. All my goalies know I'm always down if you need to talk, because I use a lot how I coach, a lot of from my own experience. And when I played, the last thing I would want to do is have the goalie coach or someone come in and tell me that if I would have played this a little different or that a little different, or I got to move this, unless it's really important, I'm not going in to talk to the goalie. But the goalies always knew that I was there. If they needed to talk to me, or if they had a question on something, they could ask the trainer. I'm standing right there. And then when the coach goes in at the 8-minute mark, the 7-minute mark, whatever, I'm coming in there and I stand beside the goalie, just as kind of a reinforcement. I will talk to the goalies on certain occasions, though.
Okay, so now,
Christmas and New Year's.
Yeah, he's like, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas. What about Winnipeg now? Because you said earlier, Jimmy Waite, was it Jimmy or his brother? Which in Chicago?
Steph Waite. Yeah, his
Steph.
brother.
Steph. Okay, so Steph was there in Chicago, right? Okay, but you said like Rockford is an hour outside of Chicago, so he had too much on his plate to drive an hour. Now in Winnipeg, the Moose are right there with you guys. How much do they lean on you to go and watch your prospects? Because these are your next group of kids coming. You're the expert. Now with the NHL teams having their kids and their minor league teams in the same city, makes it so much easier to get more organizational eyes on them. How does it differ now? Like how many nights a week when you guys are off will you watch what the Moose are doing, or how much input do you have there?
I obviously will go and take the Moose in as much as I can, but we play out of the same building. So the scheduling works that when we're home, they're on the road. And when we're on the road, they're usually home. Now, there are times where, and scouts love it, where we'll play a Wednesday, they'll play a Thursday, we'll go Friday, they'll go Saturday, and, we'll go Sunday. So the scouts come in, you got scouts from every organization, pro scouts. So those are the games that I'm able to take in when they're here. We do have a developmental goalie coach here as well that comes in 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out. His name is Drew McIntyre, who was an ex-Manitoba Moose that came in Actually, I played with him many years ago with the Moose, but so his responsibilities are to work on developing these guys. I give them free rein. Now, with all the video programming and everything in today's world and internet, we have all these games broken down. We have a whole room full of guys that will break games down from anything from the KHL to the German leagues to the whatever. If I ask for a goalie that's playing in anywhere in the world, they'll have them broken down every game he's played. So obviously I'm going to get all the Moose games, and I get them every morning. I'll go through the game and I'll watch the video, and they break it down to just the goalie clips. And if I have any concerns or anything, I will talk with our developmental goalie coach and say, hey, what do you think of that and that and that? And he'll, for the most part, we're on the same page. And he's like, yeah, I got it. We're working on that, this and that. So, so I think when I was a developmental goalie coach, Steph gave me my free rein to work with the goalies. And that's what I'm doing with our guy. Although I'm overwatching and overseeing what he's doing, I'm allowing him to do what he needs to do.
Hey, one thing. So how often would you be on the ice if, okay, so kind of a two-parter, but is McIntyre there? Is he full-time? Is he there all the time? Or is he kind of in and out? Like, is he there with the team? Does he travel with them?
He's 2 weeks in, 2 weeks out approximately.
Okay, so 2 in, 2 out. And then how often would you be on the ice with the prospect goalies, like the kids that are developing in the American League? You're not going to be on the ice with the other kids out playing junior or college because they're in other cities. But
right.
Do you ever bring them in? Say Hellebuck played the night before and you're having a practice. Will you ever bring them in for stuff like that? Do you see them on the ice that much, or is that mostly for McIntyre?
That's all Drew. If we are in the same city, if we're here in Winnipeg, we practice at 10:30. They're going to practice at 11 or 10:30, whatever. So the two clubs are practicing the same time. We practice in the big building. They practice in the practice facility. So the times that, other than training camp, that I would have the opportunity to be with them is if a goaltender is injured or on the IR. With the age of the salary cap and such, we cannot, and the roster spots, we cannot bring in a goaltender just to have him up for practice that is under contract.
I was wondering about that. Yeah.
But the beauty of being in Canada is there's a lot of goalies around. So for instance, Helly will, he's going to play 60 plus games. We have a goaltender that we drafted years ago that was in the Evander Kane trade that we sent to Buffalo, has since retired, lives in Winnipeg, still plays a little rec hockey. He's a pretty good goaltender. And when Helly needs a break, I'll bring him in. I'll say, hey, you want to come in and stop some pucks? And obviously he'd love to come out with an NHL team. So we bring him in, and it might be as much as 2 times a week. It might be not for three weeks, but whenever I feel the goalies need a little bit of a break, I can't bring up an American League goalie due to roster spots and the salary cap.
You have to pay him, right?
We would have to put him on the payroll and pay him. Right. And so our way around that is you just bring in a goaltender, and we're fortunate that we have an ex-pro goalie that's a good goalie that can challenge the shooters.
That's pretty and he gets a free lunch.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the way these teams eat now, that's probably worth it.
Yeah, I take care of him pretty good. He gets a free lunch and he gets a few bucks in his pocket.
Tim Hortons cards.
Yeah, there you go. It's all on gift cards.
Yeah.
That's it. That's interesting. I was curious about that myself, about being so close, because everybody used to be so far away. Yeah, whether you just walk over and give them a little chat every once in a while or not. But yeah, you started working with Hellebuck when he was in the minors, right?
It would have been training camps and such, but he spent his first year in St. John's.
Oh, he did. Okay.
And yeah, he would have spent his first year in St. John's, so he would have come. So Helly was playing in UMass Lowell. Funny story with Helly that I'll touch on real quickly. We had we had sent a scout, and I think it was our very first developmental goalie coach. We had sent this scout. There was this goaltender that was highly ranked in the draft, and his name was Anthony Stolars. And he was playing in the North American Hockey League down in some Texas city. Anyway, so we had sent our developmental guy to go down and watch the Stolars kid. And he had done a report on him, but he said, you know, he's a pretty good goalie, you know, as he is. This kid's playing in the NHL now. He says, but the kid that was playing against him, that was playing for this other Texas team, this kid's really good. You might want to take a look at him. So I guess the organization did, you know, sent him back to look at him a little bit more, look at this other goaltender, and it turns out this is Connor Hellebuck who's playing against him. That's how he becomes on our radar. He's an unranked goalie that's going into the draft. We pulled him out of the 5th round. It's crazy how you find goalies, but that's how we found him. We sent a guy to go watch a ranked goalie, but Hellebuck's playing against him, and he's the one that we ended up snagging in the draft.
How do the other teams miss that?
I truly don't know.
It's weird, right?
It is weird, but I think a lot of it has to do with, you know, I think it's changing now, especially in goaltending. I don't think you miss the players, but goaltenders can slide through the cracks. And at the time, I think a lot of teams were relying on central scouting, and they compile a list of about 30 North American goalies and about 10 European goalies. And Hellebuck wasn't on the list. He wasn't there. He wasn't a ranked goalie. And usually out of that 30 goalies, there's about 8 of them that will get drafted. And, you know, we were fortunate to pull them out of that. But now I think it's changed. Like, you have more scouting departments that are focused on goaltenders. The Chicago Blackhawks have stepped it up, that not only do they have a developmental goalie coach that I had done, another guy replaced me. They actually have one guy that actually is just a scout for goalies. He is the goaltending scout. And that's what he does. He goes around all over the place and he just watches the goalies.
How do these?
Hey, you know, it's kind of funny. Yeah, I just was going to say. No, but I was just going to say, because you and I can talk anytime. No, I talk to Platts more probably in my life than I've talked to you, but some of these leagues are in obscurity. And when I helped out with the Las Vegas Wranglers here, now that was in, I don't know, the 04, 05 or whenever that was back in the day. It's changed a lot. That's almost 20 years ago, but a lot of these guys are floating around in obscurity. Derek England's a classic example of this. Eggy kind of got put on the radar because he was really tough, but he was a much better skater, and he could hit, like, body check like a freight train, shoot the puck, and had a great first pass. But he was kind of, I wouldn't say languishing down in the East Coast League, and it's kind of similar with Helly. He had to go play somewhere. If someone finds him in Texas, like the hockey hotbed, right? He didn't get found in Saskatoon or, you know, Minneapolis. He got found in Texas, and it's kind of funny how I think these teams probably notice that now, and I bet you even since then, they've kind of spooled up on watching these kids in wherever they're playing.
100%.
You think it's got anything to do? You have your relationship with Hellebuck, going back to episode 1 when we were talking about you being in Williams Lake.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, who knows? You know, like when you come up through all the everything, but you know, Helly plays in it was Odessa. He was playing for the Odessa Jackalopes, is who he was playing for. But one thing Helly does tell me.
Did they go broke? I think
I don't know.
I think they went broke and somebody stole the skate machine or something like that. I think it was
That wouldn't surprise me.
You should look under Flatz's desk.
Oh, easy, Sharps. One thing I would say is that the one thing that sticks with me with Helly is that he always talks about one of his mentors who was the GM coach of the Odessa Jackalopes, and that was Joe Clark. And Joe still comes out to this day. He'll visit with Helly, and he just helped him a long ways at a young age. And it kind of goes back with what you said there, Ian, when I was in Williams Lake, when I had coaches there, that, you know, they kind of showed you the way. They were hard on you as an athlete, but they were good on you in the personal side of things. So and Helly speaks very highly of this man. Helly goes on to move on to the college career where he only played 2 years of college because we pulled him out early, just probably mostly because of his age. We wanted to start developing him. So so yeah, you might have something there.
Yeah, it's very interesting. My other question is, with all the how everything's kind of regimented, do you think how do the guys get the imagination through? Because there's you still see a lot of imagination, but the game is very regimented compared to what it used to be. And I think it has more imagination now than it did before when it wasn't. I don't know if that question made any sense at all. It made Jeff fall right off the screen. But
I gotta plug this thing back in. I wasn't expecting for us to do the marathon orange slices. So, and the dog's barking. So
I know
right back.
we could have done 3 hours. We did do 3 hours. Yeah.
That's Kokanee. She's down there giving someone hell.
Sorry, and try that again. What were you?
I just
What do you mean regiment? Are you talking on ice, off ice, like
like the whole hockey lifestyle and on ice, off ice is more regimented now. And it's you basically know where you are all the time. Whereas I don't think you did before.
Yeah, you know what? I think like whenever we go on the road or we're at home, your schedule, you're right. It is very regimented. Like you have tonight you'll get a text message probably around 8:00 tonight telling you what your schedule is for tomorrow. And that goes to all the players. On the road, they know everything's taken care of. The meals are in this room. This is what time the meal starts. This is what time it ends. You need to be on the bus at this time. Bus 1, bus 2, bus 3, then you're back. Bus one leaves the rink after practice at this time. And so, yeah, there is that. And then I would have this question to Sharps on his opinion. You talk about regimented, but would you say there are more systems in the game today than there were, in the 90s, Sharps, as a forward, as a player, as a defenseman? Would you say that there's more systems in games than there was in the past?
You know what? I think that's a great question. Back when we played, there was a lot more clutching and grabbing, right? So there was a lot of the left wing lock and all this stuff, and dump it in and run the other guy through the boards. I think there's a lot more ability to be free now and play. But I take an example, like I watch Vegas all the time. There's a specific system that Cassidy wants in his zone. The specific system he wants, in neutral ice. So it's kind of funny. I think there's some hard and fast rules, but I think when you get the puck on your stick, I think that it's way more wide open than it ever used to be, right? So it's a really good question. And of course, the game is much faster now, so you can come up with all the systems you want, but if you can't get into position to execute that, then it doesn't matter anyway. So I don't know. What do you think? Do you think?
I think there is, and I think partly it has to do with is because of what you said is no clutching and grabbing. So back in the day, the guy, you had these 6'4" D men. That's what you were looking for. Today's game, you got 5'10" to 6 foot D men that are out there playing because they're fast. Mm-hmm. But back in the day, the D men, they just hook onto you with their sticks and they'd ski with you and they'd rub you out. That's the way it is. Now that's a penalty. So everybody's trying to, and we sit in the room and you say left wing lock, or it's a bench lock, or it's a variable lock. And, everybody's trying to get to the next thing, and you're breaking down the video, trying to figure out what that team's doing when they touch the puck here. Where's everybody going? And, I think what we were talking a little bit earlier, you look at a team like Boston, they're nailed right into their systems. And then if one guy falls out of place in the D zone, you got teams that are playing man on man, or a zone D zone, and the man on man's great until the first guy gets beat. And then when that guy gets beat, all hell breaks loose, and you're looking at your goalie looking to make a big save. So I think the systems are there. without a doubt, and maybe a little bit more than what they were in the past.
I would agree. And one of the reasons is because you can push systems and what you want to do out with that 8 o'clock text. Then I was going to ask you about that. So you can push out film. You've got these guys that are breaking down all this stuff. And so the amount of information that the players have coming at them is really pinpointed and focused. This is how we want to defend. Let's just say you guys just played McDavid the other night. Okay. He's the best player in the league. He's all world, but here's maybe some tendencies. So this is the system we want to implement, and you can break it down on a few minutes of film and not overload guys. Whereas before, when we were trying to do systems back in the day, it'd be up on the chalkboard or the dry erase board. And like I would ask Flats this, looking at like power plays, like if you watch some of the best power plays in the league go at it, would you say that's like there's a certain way they want to set up, but do they run a certain system once they get into the zone, or are they just looking for something and then letting their creativity take over? You know what I mean? Like I'll give you an example, or the bumper, right? We got the bumper, and I think of Horvat in Vancouver as a classic example. He sits down there, and it's amazing how often he can get the puck, but it doesn't always come to him. It might go around to Peter Pettersson or whatever. But, you know, is that creativity like, okay, guys are in their position, and then, or is that a system? Okay, hey guys, this time we're going to run it like this, no matter what happens. And it's interesting.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And you know, you look at certain power plays, and they'll have minimum 2 set plays that they're trying to run off of, and the bumper and what you're trying to defend. And the way we operate here is that Scott Arneal runs our PK. And you're right. What happens is that he sends out the PK video, you know, of the opposition's power play the night before. And then the players get to look at it. And you know, the stuff that they have on computers to break down video is just amazing these days. So they'll send that out, and then they'll go over it. And if they have any questions, they come and talk to them. But for the most part, power plays have 2 plays. Well, guess what? You're trying to defend those, and you're trying to take those away. Well, we're in the NHL. They're going to adjust, and they're going to make some other moves. So you'd better be able to bend and not break, and then defend that as well. So you face a team like Edmonton, who has one of the best power plays in the league at the time, you know, or who we just played the other night. And, you know, you got McDavid out there. Fortunately, Draisaitl for us was not in the lineup, but you could still see the plays that they were doing, the deflection, the high deflection slot shots, you know, McDavid coming down off the half wall, ripping at the net, traffic in front of the net. So your penalty killer's got to be almost pretty much a very smart hockey minds, where they need to be able to analyze, read, and adjust to everything is so quickly with the plays that are happening in front of them.
Yeah, and back in the day, they used to have the box, right? Like basically like a box.
Yeah.
Now you have the diamond, and you have all this other stuff, and people are always like, how did they not see that coming? How did they not stop it? Like Ovechkin, how did they not know? Every team in the league knows Ovi's going to be there. Every team in the league, I know McDavid moves around, but they know kind of roughly where McDavid and Draisaitl really like the puck, or some of the things they want to do. Sometimes these guys that are with them and those players in Ovi in there, they're just brilliant, and they make plays no matter what system or what you're trying to institute to shut them down. And we were talking about the other night, Winnipeg beats Flats goes in. Hellebuck does his thing, and that's another thing. Your goalie needs to know what your guys in front of him are doing. This isn't just like, oh, that didn't really work out. Good luck. Hope our goalie can stop it. Sometimes that's the way it is, but the goalie needs to know what the defense and the forwards are doing as well. And I don't know, you know, and just sometimes those guys just beat you with those plays and then beating your goalie. But it is interesting, and I always get a chuckle out of when, well, how did they not stop Ovi or McDavid? It's because these guys are brilliant players, and the guys with them are brilliant players.
Exactly. And you mentioned on the goalie, and that's exactly it. What we're trying to do is identify the shot for the goalie. So we're trying to defend everything, and mostly the defending is the seam pass that's coming right through the circles from dot to dot. That's almost an impossible save for a goalie to get there. But if you can create passes, lateral passes, but they're above the top of the circles, we believe our goaltenders should be able to get from point A to point B and give themselves a chance at making that save. So we're trying to stop the low seam pass or the backdoor play, where now you see in the National Hockey League, I think a lot of teams, Vancouver is one, we're another, that low defenseman that's standing in front of the net, and when that puck goes down to the goal line, he's laying straight down. He's taking the bottom ice away, and he's not allowing that pass to go backdoor. So the idea is that puck has to go back up. And that is what he's doing there, is he's telling our goalie, it's not going through me. I'm taking that pass away. You don't have to worry about that. It's staying on this side. So in a perfect world, we're trying to keep the puck on one side so the goalie doesn't have to go as lateral as far.
And just kind of, and some of the other friends in the league that are PKs and power plays, what you're trying to defend, you're probably looking back over like the last 5 games of whatever that team did. In most cases, you might be going a little deeper dive. You don't want to try and go too far on a guy like McDavid because he'll drive you crazy. But most of the time, I would imagine you're looking back minimum 3 games, probably 5 games to see teams' tendencies. And they're doing the same thing to you.
100%. And that's what it is. It's turned into video and everybody's breaking down games. I break down the opposition's goalies, and it goes up in a loop before the games, tendencies of what the opposition goalie will do. That's where the game's gone now. It's there's a lot of video for coaches. That's one thing I will mention, is that I never realized how much coaches work until I became a coach. Like, we're always at the rink. We're always in our heads are into the computers. We're watching video. We're breaking down. We're analyzing. It's the power play. It's the penalty kill. It's the 5-on-5. So it's the 6-on-5. It's the 6-on-4. It's the 5-on-6. Like, you have a plan for everything.
Mm-hmm.
And the great part about it is the game is so fast now that, it's like the old story. You can have a plan, like Mike Tyson says, till you get punched in the mouth. And that's kind of what happens some nights. You got all these plans. And then I think a lot of times, not only the speed is the one thing that gets people off their rocker, but the skill of the players and their ability to move and shoot and pass is and then that's what makes the game, I think, as good as it's ever been, or as entertaining as it's ever been. And growing like it is.
I agree with you. And it's not like football where we're going to have set plays and we're going to defend set plays. It's a fast paced game and things change. So, as you go through your video, your keys are your power play, their penalty kill, their power play, our penalty kill are your keys. And you'll throw in the 6-on-5 or the 5-on-6, you'll look at it, but that usually comes out at the end of the game. When that situation happens, when all those players go to the bench, it's already drawn up on the board. Like, if they have 2 boards there. One is if we're on the 6-on-5, and the other one is if they're on the 6-on-5. The coaches will have the 2 boards sitting on the bench, and that's when they'll go over it with either the defending players or the offensive players. So it's not like you can sit there and say, hey, this team does these 15 things and this is what they rely on, because the game is too fast. That there's 3 or 4 of them that they're going to do. It's their controlled breakouts. It's this or it's that, but the game's too fast, and the game changes with every pass. The game will change.
Right. I think it's a lot to do with what you said earlier. Adjust. How does the player adjust to what's not happening? So, yeah.
Well, but the other thing too, Flats, and Lord Bag, we might have to wrap.
Don't even bring me into it. Don't even try.
No, I'm not bringing you in, but I laugh.
Nice try.
Oh, I'm gonna have to call him after the show. But Flats, don't you think that a lot of how your game plan turns out is still how you handle the puck at the blue lines?
Oh, so true. So true. Yeah. Getting the pucks in and getting the pucks out. Turnovers at the blue line. That's the one thing, that I hear the coaches talk. We didn't get the puck in. We didn't get it in. We turned it over. It was a scoring chance against, or it ended up in your net. And then the same goes the other way. We didn't get the puck out. That battle, obviously there's a D-man on the opposition trying to keep that puck in. So there's a battle at the blue line. We're just down on the half wall. There's a battle for that guy to get that puck out. So that is, I think, a lot of where games are won and lost.
Love it. You know what? Thanks, Wade. Thanks for dropping by and talking to us about how you're just a kid from Canada and a little town called Terrace, British Columbia, and just want to play backyard hockey. And then you take this whole amazing journey. The journey, like
Been a long one, man.
it's
It's been a long
crazy.
one.
The journey's crazy, but I can tell you right now, 90% of the people are jealous, and the other 10% are terrified to leave their house. So, I want to bring up. This isn't set in stone. I know all of us have been offered to go to a town in British Columbia called Terrace this summer, and this would be a great hot stove. Having you guys all talk about this in our little village that we grew up, and I hope I get to be part of it. Just putting that out there. Putting that out there. Just putting that out there. Jeff, you want to say anything? Because you look like you got to poop.
I keep looking. I always gotta do that. I'm looking over Flats's shoulder, and it looks like we've gone for like an hour and a half because Flats had to do this one while he was still in the rink tonight. But Bagsy, we know, Lord Bag, that nobody wants to hear Wade and I talk if we get in the stage up in Terrace. That's your job, not ours.
No,
So
I think
I'll be in the bathroom while you're on stage.
I would love to be part of that. That would be a really fun thing. So yeah, we'll take the slices up there and do an old hot stove up there. Yeah, that'd be fun. Thanks, Wade. We appreciate you dropping by, and the door is always open if you ever want to drop back and forgot to tell us something.
Right on.
Maybe the next time you can talk about how good a fisherman you are.
Didn't you call me Shackles, Sharps?
Oh my God. I was like,
Shackles.
yeah.
Shack them off all the time. Only yours I shacked off. I would not
He makes
mind,
me
but I
look like a
shacked
good
yours off.
You make me look like a good fisherman.
Well, I was driving the boat. I put you on the fish.
Yeah, I'll give you that much. I'll give you that much.
Okay, let's call a spade a spade. Like, come
Okay.
on. Fish on, Sharps. Go ahead. You lost the last one. You can have this one.
Yeah, I know. I can't believe what happened to that one. I'm like, well, you lost it. That's what happened. Right?
And when it was my turn to catch a fish, you'd run us over the shallows, so we'd hook up on bottom all the time. I'd be on top all the time while you were doing the other one.
I know. It's a good thing I don't fly airplanes like I drive boats. Is that what you're saying?
You guys should have a podcast called Patient and Not Patient.
Well, we were gonna do, wasn't it? What's that?
I'd say, just imagine how we are on the boat.
Oh, exactly.
A couple old men going at it.
Hey, we can't end this show without talking about the greatest fisherman we knew, which was your dad, Raymond. So we'll tell a quick funny story about Wade and I are out with Raymond, Dundas Island. Look it up, north of Prince Rupert, northwest up by and Dundas and Zayas Islands. And there's a great moorage that faces to the northwest. And in the summer, it's the greatest place to be. And there was a dock there, and we were out fishing for spring salmon, or the kings, as they call them in the States. And we had our survival suits on and our boots. Not Ray. He's got a survival suit on with his ball cleats. So we're all done at the end of the day. We actually had a good day, and it's light up there all the time. So we're probably getting ready to eat around 9 o'clock at night. Sun's still up. And Wade and I are on the boat, kind of getting everything ready. And Raymond's on the dock. And all of a sudden we're here, thump. We look, and last time we looked, Ray was facing us. Now he's facing the other way, holding on to the side of the boat. So he goes, Dad, what happened? Did you go down? No, I didn't go down. But we could see where his ball cleats had marked the dock and gone down. And there's old Raymond out there. They're much better traction with his ball cleats on. You remember that one?
Oh, I remember that like it was yesterday. That was awesome. But Man, we did some good fishing that trip though. We caught some nice salmon, but some fond memories of being up on that island, especially fishing with Ray. That was some of the best times.
That's
Gotta get you back up there, Sharps.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to try, that's for sure. So maybe we can do it in August when Ian's gonna host comedy night at the Terrace Little Theater or the Terrace Arena.
Oh, the Terrace Little Theater. I'm in the Terrace Little
Terrace
Theater.
Little Theater. I'm at the RM Glee.
You put me into the little theater.
You know what? I've been. I must be getting backed up here right now. I'm getting all blocked up.
You're looking like it.
I gotta turn these lights up or turn them down. One of the two. So
I love it. Well, thanks, Wade. I'm gonna hit stop. We're gonna talk a little bit more right now, but thanks so much.
Awesome. Okay, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Well, isn't he an interesting young man, that Wade Flaherty?
yeah, we've both spent many hours with them. It's funny. Even some of the stuff he talked about, I'd forgotten about, and but he's done a hell of a job. Like, I mean, as he's here's another guy that's never been out of the game. Flats has been in the game since he left. And he does a great job in Winnipeg with Hellebuck, right? This guy's kind of like, he's special, right? He's just a special goalie, all-star. He's probably top 5 in the league, probably top 3, could be number 1. But Flats, this guy's got a really great work ethic. But what some of the work Flats has done with, the backups has been just as impressive. And I think Winnipeg's there in the end, and it wouldn't surprise me if they don't get to the conference finals. They have a way about them, and I think they have the best goalie, no question, in the Western Conference, maybe in the NHL.
Yeah, and you can see why people like working with him just from the interview. Working with him is the same thing. It's very calm. So what you need in that position. My mom, I talked to my mom about this, the first edition of the 2 parts, and I said to her, I just thought it was easy peasy for Wade to leave Terrace and go to the NHL. And it was taking us through that whole thing was very interesting to me, and letting people know, you got to work at it, you got to chase it, and you got to work it. So it's
never easy leaving home as much as you think it is. I mean, these small towns, like you gotta.
It's different, but it's
you gotta
different
get out
where
if
we
you
grew
want
up.
to go
It's
play. That's
different, but it's different, Jeff, because to go play, it's so far away. The closest place for the WHL is Prince George, and that's 8 hours away from Terrace.
Well, and there was no Prince
It's not
George.
like going from Toronto to Brantford.
Yeah. And just remember something, there was no Prince George when we played, and
Right.
Williams Lake might as well have been on the other side of the country where Wade was too, because that was 10, 11 hours, right? So let's just say 10. So that wasn't like, on those roads this time of year, you're not
slipping home.
you're
for
not
a
jumping
meal
on
to
the
say hi.
I-5, right?
Yeah.
Or, the I-90 and hammering it, right? You're on Highway 16, and then you're on,
I'm going to start calling it V16.
B16, yeah. I mean, and then you're jumping on. I'm not sure what the one is that goes south of Prince George anymore. But here's the thing about it: you have young guys that leave these communities, and the support network, at least from the teams, as we talked about extensively last 3 hours, we talked to them. But the support network for these young players is much better than it used to be, and basically back then you're on your own. And so you're right. The bigger centers, I'll give you an example. And we talked about this. Hopefully we'll get our friend Ryan McGill on, who's in New Jersey this year. But those kids in the Ontario Hockey League are most nights are able to drive back within an hour, 2 hours and be in their own bed. The Western Hockey League, we're like 16 hours sometimes on the bus to get somewhere. 10, 11 hours, 8 to 10 hours was not uncommon. So now you're traveling like that. Now, I know when he is in Williams Lake, those teams aren't that far apart, but just now you're leaving your community, and you've got nothing around you. So that, you know, is common, or what you grew up with. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. And I don't know. I think obviously Flats had quite the career, but I think it's helped mold him into what he is today, which is probably
It's a great human.
top goalie coach, and a guy that probably could work with any team in the league if he became available. But Chevy's smart, right? Chevy's kept him locked up in Winnipeg for a long time.
Sure
So-
has. Lawrence Stella actually asked last show. I didn't get he wanted to know, was there any other guys that played with him in Williams Lake? Do you remember? Was there any other Terrace guys? Was Lawrence there? Is that why
You
you
know
asked
what?
him?
I don't know. There could have been. I mean, if you look at, like Lawrence would know this, but the local guys that are around our age that I can remember, so some of them went to Penticton. Some of them went to Kelowna. So we had some guys with we played in Kelowna with the Wings, and then they moved to Spokane and are now down there. And then
Kelowna Wings became Spokane.
Yeah, they became the Spokane Chiefs, and then I'm not sure. And then I think the Rockets were in south of Seattle, Tacoma, and I think Tacoma moved to Kelowna for the WHL. We had a lot of guys in Penticton.
I've been to Tacoma. Not many Rockets there.
Yeah, no, it's kind of an industrial place. I don't think they drew really well. They were in the Tacoma Dome, but.
That's huge.
So we
That place
had
is
guys.
massive.
Oh yeah, it's huge. We had guys in Prince George, I think, too. There were some guys that went down to Prince George. Kushner was in Medicine Hat. Trevor went to Portland, and so we had guys all over. But yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to ask. We'll ask Wade and get an answer back on that.
And then we had the Kitwanga kid.
Oh yeah.
The office pools are enjoying Orange Slice's hockey pool has been leading the league for quite a while, and he's like, "Hey guys, you never bring up the old pool. I've been winning. Why don't you give me some props?" And I said, "Well, I keep forgetting about Kitwanga. I never stop for gas there. I just drive right on through. No, but congratulations to Kitwanga kid. 847 is what he's got for points right now. And the second place is Torch with 795. Quite the difference. And then
there's a whole bunch of people kind of mixed in the mid 770s.
Sharples is one of them, 775. Mad Paris, which is Brian, our producer, 779. And I'm surprised he didn't go with everybody that is a Montreal Canadian. And then Bag of Oranges is 750, 0 points last night. Angus is 666. It's funny. He's named himself after Angus Young by the look of his lightning bolt, and he's got the Devil's number beside him, so it's all working out for him. He's in last place, 31. So
it's tough to catch. The Kitwanga kids kind of run away from everyone. But I look at my lineup.
David Panarin, Ranton, Robertson. That's probably the pick that is probably helped him out. That's nobody else got, right? Jason Robertson from the Dallas.
Maybe. I'm sure he's got McDavid in there too, but I'm sure the others do as well. But
I don't think many people pick Robertson.
Well, yeah, Robertson's a great pick, and I don't think anybody would have thought he would have scored like he did this year so far. But they did some interviews with him and just talked about his family moved from, I think, Southern California. Where'd they go? They went somewhere just for hockey for the kids, and just the work ethic that this kid has is amazing because he's not the greatest skater, but he finds a way to, get into areas where he can get the puck and he can let it go. And he's a pretty big kid. I think he's like 6'3". So, he's done really well. And his brother's his brother's in Toronto, isn't he? So that family moved at a young age, those kids, so they could get into a hockey environment. I forget what city that was that they moved to, but hey, talking about young kids, and we got to talk about the World Juniors before we go and tip our hat to the Canadian kids, because
is your shout out?
Yeah, I think it is my shout out this week because I watched those kids, and I was watching. My mom came down, we're watching, and she's like, I can't even watch this anymore. And I'm like, I just always think to myself, they're going to get there somehow. Now, whether they close the deal is the question. And the reason I always ask whether they close the deal is because I don't know, and I said this before, and I know of another team or group of people, especially young
Pressure.
people, that has more pressure than that team. Like you could tell certain parts when games got tight, you could see the pressure was getting to them. And these are all like these kids are the top kids in Canada, and they're going to be, most of them will go on to be really good pros. But I just look year after year, I go, they've been able to overcome that pressure the last couple of years, but it's like win it or you're a bum. And I'm like, look at the Czechs, look at the Finns, the Swedes are better, the Americans are coming on. The Americans are there. This isn't just a cakewalk anymore like it used to be.
Finland. Yeah.
Yeah. Did I say the Finns? Sorry if I didn't say them, but
You may have.
the Finns are good, really good teammates too. But the game's changed. And one thing that I think, without going into the rabbit hole on this, we've talked about is puck possession and skating was never really the Canadian way of doing things. It was dump it in, go run the guy through the boards, grind it out. Well, if you watch the NHL now, it's not near as physical as it used to be. It's way faster. And puck possession, all you got to do is watch overtime and see how that's changed to realize that, coming up, we need to work on make sure the kids can skate and then can handle the puck. Yeah. And that's something that obviously Canada has, the young guys have started to adapting to because they're 2 for 2 the last 2 years in World Juniors. So shout out to Team Canada and just a wonderful, tournament that they had.
Yeah, it ended nicely. And I like that it's just not a cakewalk and that they have to work at it. And it's sad that there's so much pressure on it, but at the same time, it's kind of fun. A lot of fun there.
Yeah, it's not going away, right? So we know
that every kid that was at the tournament was wearing a Heady bag from Heady Gear, HeadyGear.com. They didn't have the bags, but man, one day they're going to have all the bags. HeadyGear.com is a proud sponsor of Enjoying Orange Slices with Jeff and Ian. It's brought to you by Brett Hedikin, who played in the NHL, now a voice for the San Jose Sharks. Designed a bag that you can put patches on. Go to HeadyGear.com. Check it out. We don't have a discount for you. Maybe one day Brett will give us one, but right now, just go check out HeadyGear.com. Is that your big shout out? Pearls.
Yeah, my shout out, I'll throw it to you too. And the only other thing I would say this week is Boston coming out and just running amok out west. That team is so good. So if you get a chance to watch Boston, their goalie Allmark, I think, is 21-1-1.
Just insane.
They're so good. And
so good.
Yeah. And LA is on just a burner right now, are playing really well. They were right in there with them, and then Boston turned it up a notch, and that game was over the other night too. So pretty crazy.
Who did Ottawa beat Boston last week? I think some team that you wouldn't expect to beat Boston beat them, and it was interesting. My shout out goes to the Dallas Stars. And by the way, before we go, I want to bring it up. You played in Kansas City. Who is your general manager there?
Doug Sotart.
Okay, so his son is one of the equipment trainers in Dallas, and I brought up you and Wade, and such a big fan of you both. He started as the Water Boy, Kansas City. Do you remember him being there?
Yeah, I remember. So Doug Sotart was part of the organization and really kind of helped out in San Jose as well. So the organization, the affiliation was San Jose. So Doug was a goalie back in the day, and I think he played for the Jets.
And Toronto and New York, yeah. Toronto, and the Jets.
Yeah, and so he loved Flats, right? But Flats and him got along good. Doug is a really good guy, and just looked at it a lot differently than a lot of other hockey people. He's a really good hockey guy, and just had a different view of the game, and maybe just from playing goal made him, just look at it a little differently. I think he did a great job. great guy. And we had a lot of fun in Kansas City, Flats and I. We never really talked about that too much when we had him on, but we had a lot of fun, a lot of good times. And I stayed with him and Carmi for a while.
That's what he said.
and then I got my own place, and there's a story with my own place there too that was kind of crazy.
We talked about the murder. We talked about the
I think there was some. I think Dateline. Yeah, we'll be watching what happened on Dateline. I'll be able to find out maybe one day. But yeah, Doug, and of course now his boy is come full circle. Now he's in the NHL, is working with the Dallas Stars, who's another team we don't really ever talk about too much. But
well,
the season that they have them.
This is going to be my shout out for them. My shout out is the Dallas Stars. We've had Spotter on. He did the show, and he was a great interview. And they came out, him and DeBoer and a couple other guys came out this weekend. And DeBoer said, "I want to do your guys' podcast." He goes, "You and Sharps, I want to do you guys' podcast." Did you play with him? Do you know him from back in the day?
No, I just know. So when they were here,
Ryan McGill, right?
Right. Yeah. Gilly. Okay. So Gilly, I knew Gilly. And then Spuddy was here at Gallant. Now he's in New York. And so I knew Gilly through the Montana connection. A bunch used to play with, are all up there in the summer. But Pete and Spotter, I met their wives. They were out because they came out to some of your events. So they supported you and supported everything. And then the wives would get together and go for lunch or whatever, play pickleball. I know they did that a lot. So I'd see them from time to time, but I wouldn't ever see Pete or Spotter. But it was funny. I'd play golf all the time, or as much as I could in the summertime with Gilly when he was off, but I would hardly see Gilly during the season. Gallant, I never saw either, but we would always keep in touch with each other because these guys, their schedule is crazy. So getting them out somewhere on a day off probably isn't the easiest thing to do. But yeah, I'd love to see Pete because I think he's always been one of my favorite coaches. Go back to Florida, but I think of him really where he kind of got known as one of the better coaches around the league is what he did with New Jersey before he came out west to San Jose and then ultimately Vegas, and now he's in Dallas.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, they came out and they had a good time. He's going to do the podcast. I want to give a shout out to them. They gave me a Dallas Stars hoodie. So I have a Dallas Stars hoodie. It's down in the garage right now. But thank you to them. Thank you for coming out. A lot of fun. Good time in Dallas. This week I'm in Minnesota. I think they're home for one game. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it out there. I think it's I play in Minneapolis and their building's in St. Paul, and it's a little bit of a struggle to get to if I don't have some time. They don't have a day game. Anyways, that's all I got. You got anything else?
That's it. Love to all.
Love to all.